Welcome to the No Limits Podcast, where limits do not exist, where you can create cash flow, equity, and real freedom with the power of real estate.
3, 4. Now, we will begin.
Welcome to the dojo. The dojo.
This is Todd Toback, and welcome to the No Limits Real Estate Investing Podcast. Today, I am pumped for today's show. This is the second part in a two-part series on how to negotiate the price objection. I'm going to review why this is so important. When you are in real estate, you must absolutely know how to buy a property at a price in which you can make a profit. Our goal is to solve a problem where a seller may need to sell because maybe they're getting divorced, or they're behind in taxes, or they need to repair a property, or maybe they're a tired landlord, or maybe they're over 65 and their property has gotten in such bad condition that they can't bear the thought of selling it on the open market. Or maybe they just want to trade some equity for some speed and convenience. And that's what we do as real estate investors, as real estate problem solvers. And if you learn how to do this, and if you're able to acquire real estate at a price below market value so that you can go around and sell it at top market value or keep it as a rental for lifetime cash flow, you are in the driver's seat. This skill is so powerful. Now, if you don't know me, my name is Todd Toback, and I've closed close to now 1,200 real estate deals. Those are wholesale deals. Those are fix and flip. Those are wholesale deals where you just basically buy a property, clean it out, and then stick it back on the market. But I can tell you that me and my team, we specialize in negotiating with motivated sellers. And the first episode, we focused on that price objection when you're on the telephone, asking those right questions, getting out that number from a seller when they don't want to share it. And then in this episode, I'm going to talk about how to actually do this in person. Whenever you can get belly to belly with a person, the chances of you locking up that contract at a price in which you can make a profit drastically increases. Drastically. Now, by the way, all of these techniques that I'm talking about today are actually in my no limits selling system, right? I remember when I first got started in real estate, I couldn't get 2 words out of my mouth, right? And my mentor, Derek, taught me everything there is to know about talking to people and communicating with people and finding out problems and offering those solutions. And so when I hired my first employee in my business, his name was Brian, I actually extracted everything out of my head and taught him how to make money in real estate using these very techniques. And I've created the No Limit Selling System. If you want to know more about that, you can go to nolimitsalessystem.com. That's our website, nolimitsalessystem.com. And the information on that system is all on that page. So let's talk about how to negotiate the best price when you are in person. I'm going to review a little bit from the first part in this series, right? Your goal, again, is to find someone with a problem. If someone doesn't have a problem, if you ask questions and really there is nothing there, right? Where they're like, I want top retail price. I'm going to list with a real estate agent next week. You called me. I don't even know why you keep calling me, right? This guy or this gal probably does not have a problem. And you need to start searching for somebody that you can help, right? That is the great part about this business, is that once you understand that you must spend your time with qualified prospects, your energy is going to go through the roof. You're going to love talking to motivated sellers. You're going to love this business, and you are going to make a ton of money in the process. Once you learn how to acquire real estate below market value, it is game over. You can earn large checks multiple times a month, or you can actually get properties at a discount for your rental portfolio. And I can tell you, this is where the real net worth explosion happens. This is your craft, learning how to talk to people, learning how to buy real estate at a price where you can make a profit. So again, I'm going to review some of this stuff from the first episode, and then I'm going to go into the nuances of meeting with someone in person, because once you get belly to belly, okay, your chances of negotiating a much better price your chances are going to go through the roof. Okay. Remember, our goal is to find somebody with a problem. So you want to ask those open-ended questions, right? Mr. Seller, tell me why we are here today. Mr. Seller, tell me why you haven't listed with a real estate agent. Mr. Seller, tell me, what is the next step here with your son who's living in the property rent-free for 6 months, right? Ask those questions where they are going to be telling you and where you can listen. Here's a hint on these open-ended questions. If the seller can answer yes or a no, you're getting off track, right? You should ask a question that elicits at least a 2 or 3 sentence response, and then just shut your mouth. I've been here. I've been guilty of talking too much. I still need to remind myself not to talk during my seller appointments. You want to be asking questions, and our acquisition specialists who are on our team, okay, we work on this every Wednesday and Friday in our meetings, asking questions and listening, because you want to make sure that you are talking to the right person. You also want to make sure that you are not writing off somebody who's motivated. If you don't ask these questions, you may miss something because you are talking too much. So you want to uncover this. Now, when you are talking to a seller, you also want to control the conversation. All right, this is on the person, when you're in person and on the telephone. So if they ask you a question, you can answer it briefly, okay, but you want to immediately ask them another question. Okay, now only answer the question if it's actually going to help further the conversation to the direction that you want to go. So if they say, if they say, hey, listen, what is the best price you could give me for the property, right? They say that to you, right? You immediately want to back away from that question and say, Mr. Seller, I'm not really sure yet. I've got to ask you a few more questions. I've got to get to know your situation, the tenants, the property, the timeline, all this. Is it okay if I just gather a little bit more information before we get into price, right? And now you start to ask your questions, and now you have control. It also, though, reduces the tension, because when that seller comes to you, right, it's like a balloon, and there's a lot of air building and building and building, and they're nervous, right? So as soon as you actually just ask a question and just take your foot off the gas and hit the brakes a little bit, right, you're letting some of that air out of the balloon and reduces that tension. So you're going to really control that conversation. Now, when you're in person, man, I love doing deals over the phone, and we have done a lot of deals over the telephone. But just again, when you're in person, the chances of you locking up that deal go up exponentially. So what I would recommend is that you spend a lot of time on rapport. There are 3 levels of rapport: 1, 2, and 3. 1 is the standard rapport. Hey, oh, nice car, right? Oh, nice picture of Disneyland. Oh, I see here that you're a New York Jet fan. I see here that, you love the Cincinnati Reds, right? And you start to have this very surface conversation, and that's good, but every single wholesaler out there, or real estate investor or salesperson, has done that, right? And so now you need to start to separate yourself, and that's okay to focus on those things, right? But now you need to narrow in on this. So there's people, okay? There's places, there's experiences, and there's things, right? And so you want to find some real commonality and start to build a connection with this person when you're at the house. And so you want to ask questions. And so then you want to get to the level 2 rapport, where somebody actually teaches you something. Okay. Now, for me, I think I've talked about this in previous episodes. I happen to love tomatoes, to grow tomatoes. And I was at a seller appointment, 7, 8 years ago. And I saw that this seller had a just tremendous tomato garden. She had greenhouses and all different varieties of tomatoes. And I brought that up because it was a real commonality. And so we went into this greenhouse, and the seller started to teach me about tomatoes and when to fertilize and to under fertilize and not over fertilize, and how to prune and to make sure that the flowers were being fertilized by bees, or how we can manually fertilize and cross pollinate the tomatoes. And I remember our connection was so real and so deep. And I was actually thinking about, I got out of the mode of trying to buy the house, and I got into tomato grower mode purposely. And so now she taught me that, and I was taking notes, and I was asking questions. And so I reduced all the tension. The third part was she actually gave me some tomatoes to take home. I mean, she had like this avalanche of tomatoes, and I left with a basket and a little there's like a little rag in that basket and then a bunch of tomatoes. And by then we had developed the real connection at that point. And you betcha, okay, I was walking out of that house with a contract, and I did. Okay. And so you want to make sure that you build that rapport. Now, when you're on the telephone, before you go out to a seller appointment, if you sense motivation, right, they have a problem and you are a new wholesaler, I suggest you go out there, right? Get out there and get belly to belly. If you smell a problem, you don't even need to talk about price if you smell something brewing. If, however, you have more leads than you can handle and you want to screen a little bit further, I would do something called the soft pass. And the soft pass is a very non-threatening test. So I'll say, Mr. Seller, do you have any idea of what you want for the property? And let them shoot at a number. And you can come out at a much lower number. Hey, Mr. Seller, what if I was in this 130 to 140 range? Is that something that you'd even consider, or probably not? Right? And you're going to see how they react to that and listen. And so you don't have to close the deal at that point, but just soft pass, right? Throw it. It's like a football that you throw in the air, and it's very light, right? They can catch it or not catch it, but you want to see how they react to it so you know where and what you're walking into. All right. So if you're on the same page, if you're close, right, you don't have to be at that same number. Just make sure that you and the seller are in the same stratosphere. Now, really important, you're at the house, you're building that level of rapport. Then what you want to do is go around the house, right? All of this now is softening up the seller for reality. Have them take you around the different parts of the property. And my favorite thing to do is to start to look and feel at all the imperfections in the property. All right. So if you see a little water stain on the wall, what you want to do is you want to keep that rapport, talk to the seller, look at the seller, talk about tomatoes, talk about football, talk about family, whatever it is, and then just turn your head and then just put your hand on that water stain, right? So right now I'm actually in the studio and I'm recording this and I'm actually rubbing this cloth on the wall, right? But what you want to do is look at it and just kind of make some funny faces, right? Make some funny sounds, right? I wish you could see my face right now. I'm scrunching up my face, and that's what you want to do. And you want the seller to see that, right? Now, don't ask a question. Don't argue. If the seller says something like, oh, that's nothing, right? Don't say a word. Just make a funny face. And then this is the killer. Write a little note in your pad, right? And then do it again, and then do it again, and then do it again. And at least do it at 5 or 6 times on various imperfections in the property, right? You want to go, right? And the seller's going to start to defend some of the things in the property. Whatever you do not argue with the seller, right? Do not, say something is worse than it is. Do not get confrontational. Just have the seller's blood pressure start to realize. So now that you start to condition the seller for what your offer is actually going to be. So they may think that they're going to be at this, 150, 180 range. And now after you seeing all these imperfections and them being reminded of it and you not arguing over it, now they're starting to adjust their expectations. The other part about this is that this is very exhausting to a seller going through this process. If you're the second or third person that's been there, or, even talking to you and even building that rapport, it's exhausting. Right? So now by the time you actually get to the negotiation table, maybe you've been there for 2 or 3 hours, they're done and they want to be done. And so now you've used these questions and rapport building and, the imperfections and the time and the conversations. And now you are face to face, belly to belly. They trust you at this point, right? They trust you, but they're tired. And that's a really, really, really good point that you want to be at, right? They trust you and they are tired. Now, the thing that's great about being a real estate investor and the way that I train is that you want to negotiate the best price possible. That's the way I train. But we are transparent in our desire to make a profit. It's really, really important because you're not taking advantage of a seller, right? We're actually helping sellers when we do this. They're in a problem where they need our help. And we're going to get them from point A to point B. We're going to help them move on to the next phase of their life. And if someone wants to get more for a property, I'm going to tell them to go list with a real estate agent, right? But I'm going to negotiate, and I'm going to advise you to negotiate the best price possible. And so when you're talking to a seller, be transparent that you need to make a profit, right? And if you can help them move on, right, they're going to be ecstatic. Some of the deals where I've negotiated the largest spreads, sellers have been the most ecstatic. I can tell you the happiest sellers are the ones where I negotiated the best price, because it was such a large pain point from them. So now that you're at the table, right, and you've talked about price, and you can use some of the techniques in the previous episode, right, you want to build on those, right? You want to use the what if phase. So Mr. Seller, what if, right, now you've tried to get those numbers, you've gotten their lowest number. Mr. Seller, what if, I know that you were asking 150, but what if I could pay you $110,000? Is that something that you'd even consider, or probably not? And then they're going to come back, and then you can use the range technique that we used in the last episode, right? Also, you can use another question that I love to use, and that is that the best that you can do? And keep asking questions. Now, at any point you feel tension, you can go back to that rapport phase, 1, 2, and 3, take a break, and go back and renegotiate. Now, there's a point in every negotiation, by the way, this may go smooth, and if you guys come to a price and you want to get ready to sign the dotted line, okay, get it done. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about this in a second. But if any point you guys are stuck on price and it's not working, my recommendation is to do one of two things. Either one, to say, why don't we leave price here for a second and see if we can't negotiate the other terms? Talk about the moving timeline, the condition, the repairs, all of these things, right? Get them out. Listen to every single problem. Dig out all the pain points, because a lot of times sellers think that it's all about price, right? They think it's all about price, but in reality, it's not about price, because if it was about price, they wouldn't be talking to you at all, right? So you can move away from price, get to all the other scenarios, future pace them, meaning that you are getting them to think about the next phase in their life, right? The moving truck, the ranch that they're moving to in Texas, the horses that they're going to buy, the vacation that they're going to go on, right? The motorcycle cross-country trip that they're going to go on, right? All of these things, get them there, right? Get them thinking about the wire that they're going to pick up, or I'm sorry, the check that they're going to pick up from the bank, or the wire that they're going to see in their bank account, right? The no good son-in-law who's going to be kicked out on the street, who can no longer take advantage of them, right? You want to focus on those things and take the focus off of price. And then if you've solved that, right, come back and say, Mr. Seller, look, you know, it looks like we've got all these things figured out here. What do we do about the price, right? And at that point, maybe, okay, there's been enough loosening up and enough trust built and enough future pacing that has happened that now they will come off their price. Now, this works some of the time, not all the time, all right? But if you get good, if you work on your craft in every single part of this sales process, okay, it's going to start to compound, and you get much more deals than you did before, and your income is going to shoot through the roof. That I promise you. All right, I'm going to give you one more technique about meeting in person, and this is called the give up. So let's assume that we go back and we've pretty much built the rapport, the seller's motivated, but you just can't come to terms on that price, no matter what. What we do is I say, Mr. Seller, hey, no problem. I know I'm probably not a fit for you. Let me see if I could refer you to some good real estate agents, right? Close your book, close your pad, go back to rapport, right? Go back into that garden and talk about those tomatoes. Go back into the den and talk some college football, right? Go into the backyard and start fishing for some, giant largemouth bass. Whatever it is, take the focus off the price and back to rapport and spend some time there. If you've driven out to the property and you've got an hour in there, an hour more is not going to kill you, right? Build more trust. And as you're walking out the door, and as you've taken all the pressure off, you deflated all the tension out of that balloon, right? You can go out and say, hey, I'm just curious, by the way, this is as you're walking out the door, okay? And be really, really non-confrontational here, just curious. Hey, Mr. Seller, hey, I'm really, really, happy that I got to meet you and, your son, or you and your wife, or you and your husband. I'm just curious, what would have actually gotten this deal done? And then shut up, right? And then you will be amazed at what comes out of their mouth. Maybe they said, if you could have just come up $10,000 more, we could have done the deal, right? And then that is when your opening is there. And take it, go back to the kitchen table and get the contract signed, because maybe you're not going to be where you were, but maybe you were closer than you thought, right? They reduced their guard, or maybe you just softened them up some. So, I've done a lot of trainings on these podcasts, and actually how to get the contract signed, and much more specific. If you want to know more about the sales system, again, I've taught all of my salespeople on this and thousands of investors. Go to nolimitsalessystem.com, and please, if you can share this podcast with 3 people, copy and paste the actual link to this podcast, text 3 people. We're going to explode the show. I'm going to start adding more content and more experts. Okay. It's going to enable you to get much more knowledge. So please share the podcast, and I'll talk to you on the next episode.